Um, Bon dia. Bon dia. Bon dia. And in Swahili, where I come from, we'd say habari. Habari, and which means what's the news, yeah? And if I want to be streetwise, I would say mambo. Mambo, and then you say poa. Mambo means, yeah, so what's up? And then when you say poa, I say cool. So I'll greet you, mambo, poa, poa. It's a great privilege to be here. Melanie has introduced me in the most generous way. I leave you to be the judge. Let me get on. Let me sing for my lunch. I was really blessed by the way the session opened. It gave me huge insights. I don't know if we should call it a game, because when it was a game, I'm like, game, 66 plus. But now I'm into that game. So I'm definitely going to use it back home. And if there are any copyrights, you should please give me the information so that I don't just plagiarize. It was fantastic, really, it was. And since my work now is about consciousness, I found that the most powerful way to be to be conscious of the self. So I have learned a huge, powerful tool. Thank you. Thank you for the participant, for the resource people. I like the idea, the theme of the conference, of the summit, empowering humanity through transparency, getting personal. So I will speak to you from my own personal experience without dragging you through the gory details of personhood. I was born on the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro in a village. We are subsistence farmers. Until now, my country, Tanzania, East Africa, is probably still 80% rural. And we are subsistence farmers. I was baptized when I was 8 days and given the name Scholastica. Please be kind when you name your children and grandchildren. Give them a name they can grow into and actually carry, because I'm still a student, to live to my name. Now, being baptized at 8 days, I have just that one name, Scholastica. In my culture, you are given many names, but I was told, as Roman Catholic, my parents were told, if they give me other primitive names, St. Peter's wouldn't recognize my soul when I die, so I couldn't go to heaven. That meant I grew up already in two cultures. Roman Catholicism, and now I'm a recovering Roman Catholic. Whoever has been Catholic may have an idea of what that means, but it's a very serious transformative process of the person. And then I also grew up as an African girl, as an African female person. And I found myself to be the first girl in my community, in my village, to go to secondary school, high school, university, and to work in the town, outside the home. All this made life very complex for me. Much as I wanted to be a good girl, I wanted to be a good person, I wanted to contribute, it made it very difficult for me to understand other people. The first time I saw Muslim girls was when I was like 16 in high school. And I looked at them and I was, my goodness, they look like people. Honestly, in my head. Then I thought, oops, what did I think they would look like? And then there was no Muslim teacher in our school. It was a Roman Catholic school. But every day, 5 days, they would pray. And for us, Catholic girls, in the morning, the nun would have to come look under the bed and look in the bathroom to see who is hiding from going to Mass. And that was very strange for me. Why were we running away from going to pray When the church was there, the priests were there and everybody, and these ones were praying, nobody was supervising them. So these are some of the milestone things in my mind that made me to start to ask myself, who am I? Why am I different? Why do I think differently? Who are these other people? Is it okay for me to agree with you, to agree with them? So throughout, I came to learn that the biggest struggle for transformation is with myself. I also now have come at age, I turned 66 in January. I'm working on growing younger and living longer, and I'll come and take lessons for fitness. But honestly, I also was very shocked the day I learned that the best person to change is yourself. And actually, the only person you can change is yourself. And once you change yourself, everything else changes. So today I will share with you just a few things of what I have learned about myself, and then I'll wrap up in terms of how I think is relevant here. So the first slide, please. Can you still find it, or did it go to, It froze? Anyhow, while he's looking for it, I would like to tell you that the first area, the most important area of transformation is for the self, yeah? And one thing I recognize, the most important thing I learned as I was asking, who am I realized that I am actually three things: mind, body, and spirit. Now, as a Roman Catholic, I didn't get this impression. I thought it was the priests and the Pope were the only ones who lived in spirit. And for me and ordinary people, we saw this God on Sunday, and every time I knelt to pray. But otherwise, as I grew older, my soul was hanging somewhere, watching CNN and waiting to be condemned to hell or to heaven. Now, this is actually quite important, because I came to see that mind, body, and soul are actually interconnected aspects of our essence. Many of you may now know, I didn't know. Yeah? And then consciousness is the most important thing. Just being aware, mindful awareness. And that the universe is best viewed as a field of energy and information, so that it becomes possible to actually see you and me as part of the same field of energy and information. And then to understand that we are not just physical machines. Our hearts are not just pumps which get old and we can fix them and repair them. We are actually, we are multidimensional, and our essential nature manifests in different forms and phenomena. And ultimately, if I can then show you the layers of life in a very simplified manner. Can everybody see? Yeah, and this, what I'm sharing is actually part of what I have learned through my studies on mind, body, energy medicine, and also issues of consciousness at the Deepak Chopra Wellness Center, which is part of the San Diego University. And Deepak and David Simon were both doctors at that university. And they came to recognize not only the importance of mindfulness and spirituality into healing, but into the whole area of existence. So now, if you and I are mind, body, and spirit, the body then, the physical body, can be divided into three areas. The environment. Who can tell us how we are part of the environment? Just anyone. How have you interacted with the environment today? In very simple ways. Just drinking water, exactly. I didn't know that then. Breathing, yes. Anything that we ate is part of the environment. And yet, all the years I worked in the United Nations and they discussed climate change and stuff like that, many times these simple ways in which we are part of the environment are not talked about. And the minute I realized that actually that means if the seas and the water is actually my blood, and if they are polluted, I'm toast. I mean, it doesn't matter what political belief or how rich I am, you know? If the water is polluted, then my blood is polluted. If the air is polluted, then my lungs are roasted, yeah? And if the food is not good, then the chance for survival is not there. So even the economic arguments for me began to fade away because I saw that the environment and I are so connected that it's a matter of survival. I am the environment, and the environment is everything. Now, the mind, we may not see it, but we know it's there. And the most important point I want to say here is the reason this is an hourglass is that the ego, I came to find out that the ego is our biggest challenge, especially because you and I have been brought up to believe that our importance is based on our positions in society and our possessions. And for us in Africa, this is huge. This is why many heads of state are not willing to retire. I mean, when you are head of state, you are treated like God. When you retire and come back to the village, you are an ordinary person. How can you live like that? And I don't know how it applies to you, but the truth is, most of the time, when we are resisting, when you feel a tightness in the chest, you should know that your ego is not comfortable. Now, many times we give the ego a bad rap, but the ego is a good thing. It's an indicator. All we need to do is to listen to it, and then to understand what it is telling us, and to make peace with it, you know, to decide to resolve that issue. Like I was a bit resistant, you know, being told I'm going to play, I'm 66 plus. In my community, they would even carry, well, even in this community, there are people carrying my bags because Granny is struggling to carry them because she's not fit enough. But actually in society, we are not, in my society, we are not encouraged to be playful and active. And that already gives you certain perceptions. And so the ego resists even those things which are good for me. You know, getting up in the morning to go and exercise, I have to think, where am I going to exercise where grannies will be looked at as okay to exercise? It's as simple as that. So our ego is something to watch. The other interesting thing I learned is that there is another part, mind, body, and then the causal body, that which caused us, whether you believe in God or not. But somehow, something caused you and I to be here. And this, for me, was very interesting because there's the personal soul. You and I have different experiences. Even if you are twins, you actually grow differently because you have a personal soul. There is the collective soul, which is the community, the myths, the religion, the ideology, the values. And what happens in the collective soul affects what happens to you and I, which is why we have a vested interest to make sure that whatever we do is good for us. If it is going to be good for us, it also has to be good for community. And then finally, the universal soul, which is pure potentiality or spirit. Now for me, this was very important because not only did it mean that I am all these three things, but it meant all the time, I am spirit. I mean, can you imagine how a Catholic girl would feel, how happy that it's not only the Pope who is spiritual or spirit, it's actually me and you. And that ultimately, I am an eternal spirit being having a temporary human experience. That has actually become very important to me as I get older. I am less afraid of death because I know, death is actually seen as, as finito, finished, you are gone. But now I know that's not true because anything which is cannot not be. It can't not be. So whether I go to heaven or hell, or whether I reincarnate, but the truth is, I don't end because I'm part of universal spirit. And that was very liberating for me. And I think it was also liberating in the sense, even in a political sense, I don't have to fight for everything, to have everything, whether it's material or whatever, because I am here for a reason. I'm here for a purpose. And whatever happens, I interact with it in a manner, in the best way I can, and then we are done. Now, I also learned, whether you follow religion or whatever, silence, meditation, reflection, introspection, prayer are very important in terms of helping to transcend mind, body, and spirit. So I was really, really glad when we started this meeting with a short session on meditation, because it helped us to reincarnate, to actually go within and be present. And we didn't have to belong to any religion. It's just that that was the best way to start the day. So in this rat race, and believe me, the United Nations operates with the very fast-paced spirit values of the United States. And Ann Kohler will have to forgive me. I'm not knocking the United States. It's just that the United States is predominantly the soul of the earth right now. It is that which is, we are, in that sense, there's a vata derangement that comes with that kind of energy. And we need to recognize it. We need to understand it. We also need to give ourselves permission to disengage, if that is what is going to be nurturing for us. So, and it's not about nationalism, because today, it doesn't matter which nation you come from. Actually, I even think when the United States votes, we should all vote. Not least because, not least because, as my late President Nyerere used to say, whether you like it or not, when the United States sneezes, the rest of the world catches a life-threatening pneumonia. So we really need to be engaged, not only because we are interfering in any nation state, but because we are, we are them and they are us. In so many ways that even walking around in Brazil, I can no longer, and in Africa, I can no longer know when I'm in Harlem, when I'm in New York, I go to a restaurant, everything, we are connected. So the issue of actually then going into a state of meditation and being present becomes very important, because then you touch that which is universal. Universe, one song, we are one song, regardless of nation borders and stuff like that. That's the other thing I learned. Now, quickly, not only did I learn that I'm mind, body, and spirit, which were important to help me to also understand others, but that we are made up of the 5 elements of nature: space, air, fire, water, earth. And that these actually influence our personality types. Yeah? So the difference, you and I have all of these things. The difference is the proportions which appear in our personality. Now, interestingly, I won't go into everything, but when I talk of So we see some of the characteristics, of Vata have to do with air and space, yeah? And we also see, when the Vata space in the world is balanced, and in you, we would feel energetic, creative, adaptable, spontaneous, etc. When it is imbalanced, which is most of the time now, globally, then we have this anxiety, stress. The data shows that 90% of disease is caused by, stress is an underlying cause for 90% of diseases for you and I. And that is a very huge issue. And we need to recognize it and deal with it. Otherwise, it will trip us up. Then there is the energy called pitta, which is actually the fire and a bit of water, fiery. And as I speak, you can actually also recognize yourselves. And the pitta nature is actually bright, warm, friendly, good decision maker, etc. But when it's out of balance, and you can see in the world right now, the pitta energy is also quite strong. Angry, anger, irritability, critical, judgment, everything we judge, you know? It's very unhealthy to do that. At the personal level, you know, we get aggressive. And actually, aggression in society today is praised as being upfront, avant-garde, you know, and willing to take action. It is actually an imbalance. And indigestion, we will not talk about it in global terms. We can fill in the blanks. And then we have the kapha, which is an energy that is associated mostly with winter and cold, because it's slow, it's cold, but it's steady and, you know, it's easygoing, methodical. But when we are out of balance, then we are dull, we withdraw. And there's a particular global trend of being overweight. That is the kapha imbalance. But it is caused by how we also treat the environment. So the thing is, and this is coming to the end just now, the need to understand these things is, first of all, we understand the self, you know, and your mind-body type constitution is determined at conception. And I do have a tool which actually you can fill out the questionnaire and I can interpret for you what it means and for you to understand yourself. I actually filled out that questionnaire and understood myself at age 61. I wept. I really wept. Why did I weep? I wept because I realized all the things that people had been criticizing me about were my natural strengths. And what had I done over the years? I had tried to self-censor, you know, self-censor in order to please, to be acceptable, and in the end, you pull yourself completely out of balance. Now, the trick is not to self-censor. The important thing is to know what to do when you are out of balance, so that you can give yourself time out, and then remember those areas I showed you, like the weak areas. When you know you are feeling like that, then you know it's time out, and you take certain action to be in balance. And the current state of mind is influenced by your experiences and your choices. Do you know I never knew I had a choice not to be angry? I grew up being scolded, hey, do this, da, 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 da. And actually I became expert at being angry. And when I got angry, I made sure I was so angry until I was satisfied that I was angry. What did that do? What did that do? It makes you an impossible person. And you actually create issues in the tissues, which become diseases. That's how we get diabetes. That's how we get blood pressure. That's how we get all these things. And I mean, can you imagine? You know, Mandela said being angry is like, you know, drinking poison and expecting your enemy or your neighbor to die. Do you know how much poison I have drunk in my whole life? I don't know about you, but now I'm very busy and drinking that poison by dealing with the issues in the tissues. Now, the whole point of this is maintaining balance at the personal level, at the community level, and at the global level. And lastly, if we were able to do nothing else, but we actually, all of us became and made sure everybody in our community is self-aware. What would that do? It would help all of us to bring up our children as conscious individuals. Children learn what they observe. Children learn what they live. And as long as our children are growing up in these dysfunctional homes and societies, it is going to be very difficult for us to change ourselves and them to change themselves, let alone to change the world. I thank you for your attention. Born on the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro in a village. We are subsistence farmers. Until now, my country, Tanzania, is East Africa, is probably still 80% rural. And we are subsistence farmers. I was baptized when I was 8 days and given the name Scholastica. Please be kind when you name your children and grandchildren. Give them a name they can grow into and actually carry, because I'm still a student, to live to my, and learned a huge, powerful tool. Thank you. Thank you for the participant, for the resource people. I like the idea, the theme of the conference, of the summit, empowering humanity through transparency, getting personal. So I will speak to you from my own personal experience without dragging you through the gory details of personhood. And then when you say poa, I say cool. So I'll greet you, mambo, poa, poa. It's a great privilege to be here. Melanie has introduced me in the most generous way. I leave you to be the judge. Let me get on. Let me sing for my lunch. I was really blessed by the way the session opened. It gave me huge insights. I don't know if we should call it a game, because when it was a game, I'm like, game, 66 plus. But now I'm into that game. So I'm definitely going to use it back home. And if there are any copyrights, you should please give me the information so that I don't just plagiarize. It was fantastic, really, it was. And since my work now is about consciousness, I found that the most powerful way to be to be conscious of the self. So I have. Bon dia. Bon dia. Bon dia. And in Swahili, where I come from, we'd say habari. Habari, and which means what's the news, yeah? And if I want to be streetwise, I would say mambo. Mambo, and then you say poa. Mambo means, yeah, so what's up?